So it's the end of the year, which means it's time to talk about every book that I read this year. So this is gonna kind of be like a tier list, but like not really. There will be different tiers, but there's not like a proper tier list. I've read at the time that you are watching this. Nope. At the time that I'm recording this, I've read 97 books, which is just an insane number. It's just a freaking insane number. So I've read 97 books. At the end of the year, we're like 2 weeks away from the end of the year. At the time I'm filming this, I would have read 100 books. Yeah, that's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. Especially considering that I didn't start like reading for real until 2022. So the fact that it's the end of 2024 and I've managed to read almost 100 books in 1 year seems insane. And it still seems insane after I've wrote out my entire list of all of the books that I read to like rank them. A lot of it doesn't feel like it happened. At least this year, it doesn't feel like it happened, but it did. So we're going to get started. I'm going to start with my top 10. These are my favorites of the year. It's hard for me to definitively say which one is like my actual number one. I think you might be able to ask me on a different day and I'll give you a different answer. But as of today, my favorite book of the year is Elena Knows. Elena Knows I read back in March. I'm about to do a reread of it. As soon as I turn this camera off, to be honest, I'm going to start rereading it again. Elena Knows is about a mother who lost her daughter. She believes that her daughter was murdered. She essentially is just like on a journey to get help to figure out what happened to her daughter because she's differently abled. She's not really in a position to be able to like solve this like murder herself, but she is on a journey to try to find someone. She has a person in mind that she believes would be able to help her. The book I think takes place over a day and it's just excellent. Like it's just excellent. I think I talked it up pretty well in my like Women in Femmes video, which was my like March reading wrap up. I still think about that book like every day. Like every single day I'm still thinking about that book. I think it's just a toxic mother-daughter relationship. I'm gonna eat it up every time, but the repetition of every single time Claudia, the author, says Elena knows within the text. One, I love a title drop in general in a book, but the repetition of Elena Knows constantly coming up is just, it's so good. And once you get to the end of the book and you like reflect on all of the times in which just the words Elena Knows is repeated, it adds it's so good. It's so good. I definitely suggest that you read it if you haven't. And that's my top book. I hope I want to stick to that. The next book in my top 10 is going to be Monstrilio. Monstrilio is a horror. The root of it's about grief. And I don't even, saying at the root of it doesn't even feel like I have to say that because it's so aware that it's a book about grief. There's something about that I feel almost adds to the feeling you can get from reading it because the book is so aware of itself. It's so aware of what its message is. It's so aware of what it's representing. Other books about grief kind of exist sometimes as like, oh, we're not really saying it's about grief, but like this book is about grief. This one like just fully leans into it. And not only does it fully lean into its overall concept, but the horror elements in it are so good too. They made my skin crawl. They made me feel uneasy, but not to a point where I was like, oh, I hate this. Like not to a point where I was like fully disturbed, because the horror of it plays such an integral role in getting the point across of the story that I can't even complain. Even at its like kind of most like gruesome and like gory parts of it felt so well placed that I can't even be mad at it existing. So that's my second book. And my third book is going to be American Rapture. American Rapture is essentially a dystopian pandemic novel. People start to exhibit the symptoms of COVID, but it turns into something else. something that's not that. It somehow gets worse. The thing that I really enjoyed about this is the fact that it's a book that, one, I actually enjoy dystopian novels that are talking about, are kind of in conversation with the pandemic and how that's impacted people and how how our lives have changed because of it. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the book mainly, but also what it has to say about Catholicism, about Christianity, about religion as a whole, about identity within religion and then outside of it, and even like conversation about how these different like religious sects have dealt with the pandemic. As someone that had left the church during the pandemic, I definitely appreciated like the ties within the two. So this book also just resonated with me. And I read it recently, so maybe this is also recency bias, but I really just think it's really that good. The next book, Crow Mary. I wasn't originally going to put Crow Mary this high, but there's something about that book that I just enjoyed so much. I feel like it almost added context to every other Indigenous book that I read after that within November, because I was reading mainly Indigenous literature in November. I feel like it just added more context. For some reason, there was something about reading that first before reading the other books that I read that made everything else seem even better. Crow Mary is about this woman who is Crow, and she ends up marrying this white man, and you just see how that shapes her life and how white people have destroyed things. Like, I don't really know if there's like any other way to put it other than that. And you just like watch her exist under these circumstances of being uprooted from her family, being married to this white man who, spoiler I guess, ends up being a drunk. Him becoming an alcoholic, I should really say that, him becoming an alcoholic based on what he was doing that led up to him being an alcoholic, feels both really sad but then also like poetic justice. And there's just something about the writing of the book. It's also based on a true story, and it's just real good. And maybe again, this is also recency bias because I read this in November and it's December, whatever day it is in December, and so maybe that's kind of the reason why it's like sitting with me. But there's just something like I keep like going back to that book. The next book is Small Worlds. Small Worlds takes place over, I think, 3 summers. Ooh, we really gonna test my memory now. It's in typical Caleb Azumah Nelson fashion, where it's has a landscape of music. The writing is very like flowery, and it seems like it was written by a poet. It's so beautiful, so heartbreaking. At the end of reading that book, I was crying. Yeah, this book also deals with grief. It doesn't do what I had mentioned other books do about grief. Like, it's very aware that it's talking about grief, but because it's Caleb, it's very flowery, very still poetic. It's giving you the signs that there's grief, but in a very particular way. That feels kind of like being artsy about it and not as heavy-handed as what I was mentioning with Monstrilio. This is again just another book that has stuck with me throughout the year, given that I read it back in February and it's still making its way into my top 10. But I feel like if Caleb releases a book, like, it's going to make it into my top 10, like, be so serious. So again, if you haven't read it, definitely suggest it. If you liked Open Water, definitely suggest it. The next book is My Dear Henry. I was not expecting to put this again. I wasn't expecting to put this in my top 10, but I haven't stopped thinking about this book, and I loved it so much. It's a gothic horror romance about 2 boys that are very much in love with each other. It's one of the first times that I think I've read a gothic horror, at least at the time in which I read that, which I think was back in June, that I read a gothic horror that I wasn't like, yeah, this is kind of boring. Like, it was actually interesting the whole time. I really enjoyed the romance. I really enjoyed the characters. It was just real good. It was real fun. I like to see 2 black boys be in love. That was cute. And that's how it made it to my top 10. Love Times Infinity. Love Times Infinity also, again, might suffer from recency bias. I feel like a lot of these books might suffer from recency bias, but Love Times Infinity is a young adult romance. It's about this young girl who's has a bad relationship with her mother. She lives with her grandmother. She's poor, and she falls in love with this rich boy. It talks about the toxic mother-daughter relationships. You just see the little boy that she likes and her best friend just being absolutely in love with her, and one of those platonic, the other one romantic, being absolutely in love with her and her being absolutely in love with them. Their relationship, her realizing that even though she's essentially come from nothing, that doesn't mean that she can't become anything else. The book is just really good. It's real good. It has its funny moments. It's very wholesome. Definitely one of my favorite YA romances that I read. Is My Dear Henry also YA? These are the questions. It was definitely one of my favorite YA books that I read, obviously, because it's in my top 10. Let's be so serious. I was a teenage slasher. This almost feels unserious to put in my top 10, but like when I kept thinking, when I was looking at every single book, like I had typed it up in my phone, I was looking at every single book that I had read, I kept going back to I was a teenage slasher, and I was like, actually, I kind of loved that book. I loved my reading experience of it. I thought it was camp gold. That's the thing about this book. It's horror and it's camp and it's gory and there are some lines in this book that I found so hilarious that I had to put the book down and just stare into space for a second. I was like, I don't even know what to do with myself because this is so funny. This is so funny to me that I don't know what else to do. It takes the concept of slashers and the like unseriousness of the way in which slashers exist and just leans into it and makes it a camp masterpiece. Honestly, every Stephen Graham Jones book that I read, I'm just like, oh, this is so good. Might have to say that he's one, gonna be like an instant buy author, and then two, say that he just might be one of my favorite authors, because there just hasn't been a book so far, and I think that might have been my like third Stephen Graham Jones book that I've read so far. I know he got like 50-11 bookshelf, and it was just so good, and I had such a good time reading it, and it was an experience. It was hilarious. I definitely wouldn't say that it's for everyone, but it was definitely for me. I was definitely the target audience, and I had a great time. Minor Detail is a Palestinian novel. It's fiction, but it is discussing some of the horrific things that have happened to the Palestinian people, literally within the title of it being Minor Detail. Just a book that is very detail oriented. The writing is beautiful and gut-wrenching, and it's so sad. Once I got to the end of it, I felt absolutely devastated. I normally don't like walk around with books, ironically enough, as someone that reads as much as I do. I don't tend to really like go anywhere with a book. But I like brought that book to work and was like reading it before I like opened up the store that I work at. That's how much of a hold that the book had on me. That's how like gripping that the book is. And I don't even think that's just with, the knowledge that a lot of us have now with the genocide. I don't even think that it's just that. It's honestly just such a well-written book and is doing something in such few pages that I feel like a lot of books just don't accomplish. And it's just so good. And the last book that made it into my top 10 is The Invocations. This book, how do I explain this? It is a book about these three girly pops that all end up having links to each other. They're all messing around with magic, and one of the girly pops like curses herself, and she's like, I need to get uncursed. And we're just watching their journey on, one, the girly pop trying to get uncursed, and two, they're also trying to solve this like mystery that's happening where a bunch of these women that have gone to the witch, that's like one of the other characters, one of the other girly pops, has gone to this witch and has since ended up getting killed, and they're trying to figure out what has happened. It's good. It's so good. I absolutely love this author's like writing. Their writing is so good. It's so kind of like gross. I think that's the best way I can describe it. There's always like one girl that's just straight up gross in all of her books, and it's normally, I think, always a trio, because in the last book it was also like, I think, 3 sisters. So the books are always a trio, and one of them is always just like icky, nasty, and stinky, and it's just like, girl, why is that your tea? But besides Miss Girl being icky, nasty, and stinky, it was very good. It got kind of sad at the end. There was also a really good quote towards the end. I'm not going to tell you the quote. I'm not going to get up and get that book. I'm so sorry. We have too many books to cover for me to start grabbing all the books. But yeah, it was really good. I had a really good time, as I did with all of the books in my top 10. But we are going to swiftly move out of my top 10 and go into the next 20 books that are on this list. So this next section is going to be titled Daddy, I Love Him, because these are books that I still love, that I am still thinking about often. These are still books that I've given like 4 stars. Some of them I've even given 5 stars to, that I really liked, I really enjoyed. They just didn't quite do enough to make it into my top 10, but they're still some of my favorites. So the first one we have is Just by Looking at Him. I originally wasn't going to put this high up, but I kept thinking about it. I was like, no, I actually really enjoyed this book, and I don't know why. I don't actually know why, and that's also kind of why I titled this like section the way I did, because some of these books I'm like, I'm not even sure what's got me hooked in them, but they're so good. This book is about a man that is differently abled. He is been in this like long-term relationship, and essentially he's just like, ooh, maybe I want like more than this situation I got going on. At the heart of it, it's a romance, even though he ends up not being with the person that he starts off the book with. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought the conversations around disability were really good, even though I don't have any physical disabilities, so how well can I say that it was represented? I can't, but at least from my perspective, I enjoyed it. Little Luck is another book that really well showcases a toxic family dynamic, specifically with a mother and child. The main thing that I really enjoyed about reading A Little Luck was just how they discuss decision making. In the book, there's one specific event that is the catalyst for essentially every other event that we're witnessing within the book. You just see how important it is to own up to your decisions, to stand firm in them, I guess. And just the conversation around that, and how life is just a series of decisions and choices. It handles that so well. And again, just Claudia being really good at creating a complex story with complex characters in such a short time frame, as far as like the length of the book. Charming as a Verb, another YA romance. This one is hilarious. I've already talked more in depth about Charming as a Verb in my like February reading wrap up, so I won't like go too into detail about it, but it's essentially just about this boy that's getting ready to go to college, and he just makes choices. He just makes bad choices at that, around how he's gonna go about getting into college. There's a lot of conversation about your family's expectations of you, your expectations of yourself. And then also it's just has a real cute little romance in it. And being in the main character's head is hilarious. He's such a funny character, has so much charisma. It's so good. I understand all of the Tommy Orange hype. And when I say all the Tommy Orange hype, I mean the way Jack Edwards has hyped up Tommy Orange. I actually have not heard anybody else hype that man up. I'm so sorry. But I get it. There was such a experience. The reason why this is here more than anything is because of it kind of like sticking in my mind, and not even so much of overall some of my like grievances with it. I enjoyed it so much that I feel like it outweighs my grievances, because I did kind of feel like there was a little too many like characters in this book, and it was a little hard to like keep track of everything, but every story was good, and that's the reason why I have to still have it placed where it is, because I'm still thinking about it. I still enjoyed the stories, I still enjoyed the characters, I love what it was trying to say, so I still have to put it here. But this was definitely, again, another one of the books that I read in November, reading Indigenous literature, and again, a really good one. Honestly, most of the books that I read last month were really good, by the exception of like 2 of them, and we're gonna get to them when we get there. All My Rage is a book that I wasn't expecting to be what it was. The fact that it's essentially a YA romance, like that's what it is. It's a YA romance, but it's dealing with so many heavy topics, dealing with abuse, dealing with assault, dealing with incarceration. There's like so much, dealing with death. Like there's so many things, heavy topics that this book touches in a way that I think is somehow really appropriate for a young audience. Like it's handled in a very like gentle way, but also is done in a way that I feel like even if you're not the target audience for it, you can still appreciate it and respect it for what it is. I just remember at the end of like reading the book, and I'm like, I like just stressed out. Like I was just so stressed out because I felt for the characters so strongly, and I just thought that this book it handled all of its themes so well, and the writing is incredible. And I even though it obviously has the target audience of it being YA, I really do think that this book is great for anyone that can, I guess, stomach all of the heavy topics. How to Say Babylon. This is a memoir. Honestly, when I think about every memoir that I've read, this might be the best memoir I think that I've like ever read. The way in which this author tells her story is just like, you can tell that it feels as if everything that's ever happened to her, which it's like a memoir, okay, everything that's ever happened to her has like led up to the memoir existing in the way in which it does, if that makes sense. I don't even know how to like properly describe how I feel about this memoir other than it just being excellent. Out of every memoir that I've read, I just don't think anyone has been able to tell their story quite in the way that this author has been able to tell her story. Radio Silence. Radio Silence is able to accomplish something a way that I don't think I've ever read a YA book be able to accomplish. There's something about the way in which the teenage mind works that Radio Silence is able to like tap into and articulate that I found almost uncanny. Like I was reading parts of this book and being like, oh, this actually teleports me back to being a teenager. Like I remember thinking this way, I remember feeling this way, I remember life seeming that everything was, all my emotions were heightened. I just remember that whole existence, and I don't think I've read a YA book that quite encapsulates that. The way in which Alice is able to encapsulate kind of the sense of like doom. It feels very like melancholy. The way that she's able to showcase that in her writing, in this book in particular, I think is just insane. Out of all of the like Alice Oseman books that I've read, I think this one is just the best one. I think this is better than the Heartstopper series. I think this is better than Loveless. I think it's just able to do something that the rest of her books haven't been able to accomplish. Like it's just tapping into something that the rest of them don't. And this one is just so good. Wisteria. This is the final book in the Belladonna trilogy, and it's the best one. It is the best one. It makes everything that has led up to this book make sense and like hit so much better. The fact that this book gagged me so bad because I'm thinking that Signa is like the actual like protagonist in this, and like no, she's not. Like whoa, that's so crazy. And the writing in this I feel like is better. The way that this ties up The story I think was so good. This feels like an actual like completed series, and given I haven't read any other series really. Yeah, no, I don't think I've really read like many other series, but this is how I imagine that like series should go. They should end like this. It just worked. Everything about it just worked. I was like I've been locked into the series from the beginning, but that last book just did something to me. Here's where we're really gonna have to remember that this section is called But Daddy I Love Him, because the next book on the list is The Pairing. I know that at least when I was reading reviews, no one likes this book but me. Nobody likes this book but me. In the like very beginning of the book, where it's saying like who the book is for or to or whatnot, Casey McQuiston says that this is like a book for them, and like I can see it, and there's something about it being a book for them that I feel like I respect and like understand more. I know a lot of people don't seem to like their writing and their books for some reason. To me, I think that they are really good. I had a great time with this. It made me emotional at times. I loved just the overall like journey that this book went on, both the journey of the book in and of itself, and then also like them being on a journey in the book. I enjoyed all aspects of it. I resonated with the main character. I had a good time. And one of my favorite things actually, that isn't even within the book but just has to do with the book, someone had left a review that said that there was too much French in the book, and that's like one of my favorite reviews that I've ever read on a book. And yeah, that's how I'm gonna leave that. Crooked Kingdom. We're going to discuss a duology. I was gonna say a series, and then I was gonna have to say that maybe I'm a liar because I said that I don't really read any other series, but are we counting a duology as a series? Fantasy girlies, stand up, let me know. I don't know. Anyways, Crooked Kingdom gagged me. It did. I have been invested in, what is the name of that series? Six of Crows. Okay. I've been invested in the Six of Crows series literally from page one. Like page one had me gagged. The ending of the book made me so sad. I was so devastated at the end of the book. Had to go into, I said this I think in my like wrap up where I was talking about this book. I was like, how am I supposed to focus on doing work when all of the characters that I love are just down bad? I still actually think about all of these characters often, and I can't necessarily say that for even a lot of the other books that I've already mentioned. I don't necessarily think about the characters in and of itself. It's more of like the story and not the characters. But I don't just think about the story of this. Like I also, if anything, I like mainly think about the characters, because I think the characters are so well written and so good. This book is sad at times. It's real cute. It's real fun. It has high enough stakes. The summer Hikaru died, the first volume, I have talked up this manga so much, and maybe it's just because this is like the first manga that I've ever read, and that's the reason why I'm kind of like locked in. But this is so good, and it's so good to the point that I've kind of, as I've been reading every volume as it's coming out, I've been like talking to my partner about it, and like even he's like locked in at this point, because I'm just like hyping it up. The artwork is beautiful. The story is so gripping. It's so interesting. I like every volume that I read, I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? And I think that the first volume really just like sets such a like high bar for the rest of the series. It's so good. We're gonna go into like 4 classics just back to back, and I'm not even really gonna say much about them. I'm just gonna like let you know that this is where they are on the list. So first we have Recitatif. I hope I said that right, because whoa, that's hard to say. So that's the first one. Still thinking about it all the time. Want to reread it. Always thinking about rereading it. Don't know why I haven't reread it. Only dull people are brilliant at breakfast. The Oscar Wilde tweets. They just hit. Like there's nothing else to say. Sula, masterpiece. Everything Toni Morrison does, masterpiece. You don't even have to convince me anything else. Just masterpiece. The Picture of Dorian Gray. The gothic horror that walked so every other gothic horror could run. Yeah. Enjoyed every second. Every second. Except for that one chapter, which I think is like chapter 17. I think that's boring. But everything else, loved it. Thought it was great. I talk more in depth about it again in my like video on the classics. The Tea Dragon Society. This is a like middle grade graphic novel, and it's so cute. It's so precious. It's queer. And I wish that this was something that I had when I was a kid. I would have absolutely adored this. I feel like there isn't even really much to say. It was so cute. It was so sweet. It made me like tear up because I was just having a great time. Just having a great time. The art style is so cute. There's no stakes really. It's just it's a cute little fun time. Bad Fat Black Girl. This is a memoir that is very entwined in the conversation around feminism. Is that how I want to say that sentence? Well, we're here now. I love how this author, one, tells her story, our stories. She has such an incredible like narrative voice. Like I listened to her memoir on audio and I was like, oh yeah, this is so excellent. I'm like, there's such an authority in the way in which she speaks about her stories, about her understanding of feminism, about hip hop. There's so much passion and love and care in her relationships with other people, her relationships with herself. And it was just a really great experience. And especially if you are someone that is already a feminist or knows about feminism, I think this is really good instead of some of like the more like starter, I guess, types of books. This one just works. And I think even more so if you are into hip hop or hip hop culture and you want to see the relationship between the two. I think it's just so well done. Woman Eating. Once again, another little gothic book. Woman Eating deals with a toxic mother-daughter relationship. It's about a vampire and her trying to figure out how she's going to get blood now that she's not under her mother's care. It's just a whole lot of like nothing really happening, but like technically the plot is moving forward. If you can even, I guess her finding blood is the plot. I just enjoyed this. This is like the type of book that I would enjoy anyway. So it wasn't even really a surprise, but it is a book that, again, the reason why it's in this section, because I just kept thinking about it. Like I think about this character. I think about the like concept of I think about the character more than the concept of the story, to be honest. This was the exact type of book that I would be into, and therefore I was into it. And therefore it's in this section of the list. Funny Story by Emily Henry. Of course, Funny Story would be in this part of the list. I love all of Emily Henry's books, to be honest. Funny Story was one that I feel like I resonated the most with out of all of her other books so far. Her writing just works for me. I think that it leans into obviously like chick lit more than just purely romance, and there's something about that I really enjoy, especially because I feel like a lot of times adult romance just doesn't really have a leg to stand on. Like there's not really anything holding it up. It's just like, oh, the romance, and there's like nothing else to it. So then the characters kind of like fall to the wayside and the plot falls to the wayside, and there's just not anything else to grasp onto with the book. But with Funny Story and with all of Emily Henry's books, I feel like there's always something to grasp onto alongside with the romance. Like you're rooting for the romance, but you're also like rooting for the characters outside of the romance. Like I feel like almost even if the characters weren't to end up together, you would still like want to see them happy and want to see them like doing well. And even if the end goal wasn't for them to get together, I feel like she cultivates stories that work in that way, where you don't feel like, oh well, this only works as a romance. If you take the romance out of it, I feel like the book still works. And the last book in this section is Greek Lessons. When I was again looking at all of the books that I could put in this section of books that I really, really like, that I feel like really stuck with me, realized that Greek Lessons is a book that I still think about. I still go back to. There's scenes within this book that like replay in my head all the time. I love the conversation this book is having about language and about communication and about relationships. It's so well written. So the next section, we also have 20 books in. And this next section is, yes, I do like that. These are books that I really liked. I enjoyed them. They're, again, obviously not favorites. And they're not books that I am necessarily going back to mentally. They're books that I, for the most part, I'm like, I would recommend this. I would tell you that this is a good book. It's a book that I probably forget that I read until I'm like, oh yeah, I did read that. And I did enjoy that. Yes, I did like that. So the first book, Leave the World Behind. I feel like if I was making this list right after I read Leave the World Behind, it would have been further up within this list. I didn't hold on to it in the way in which I thought that I would when I first read it. But what I will say is this book is written so well. I never saw the film. I've only read the book, and there's like an eeriness to it. All of the dialogue I think is just like spooky ooky. Like there's just something about the energy and the vibe of the book that has this like creepy, and like I feel like my skin is crawling, but it's not really, maybe it's considered horror, but it doesn't feel like the type of thing that I would normally call horror. Like it's because it's not gory, it's not, just something that's like gruesome and like it's none of that. It's just, I guess because it's dystopian, like that's the thing that makes it scary. That's the thing that makes it horror. The Kiss Countdown. This is another romance, but this is an adult romance. This is Strangers to Lovers, about a woman that does a really silly thing in front of an ex that ends up with her having to fake date an astronaut. It was very cute. It was very wholesome at times. I learned a decent amount about astronauts. This was actually a Lily Reads book club pick, and it was funny in the live stream. Kenya said that she didn't realize that astronauts still went into space, and I'm like, girl, you and me both, because I didn't know that either. I didn't know the girly pops up in NASA was still going into space. I thought we were done. I actually thought we were done. But this book was really cute. It was really fun. I really enjoyed the romance. At first, I thought that I didn't like Strangers to Lovers, but I think I've just been like brainwashed from so many Friends to Lovers. At Night, All Blood is Black is another book that feels very me-coded. It's dark, it's sad, it's about grief. People are suffering. It's a war book. There is aspects where there's a lot of repetition. It literally just like hits. It checks all the boxes. It hits all the beats of the type of thing that I would be into, and therefore I was into it. Concerning My Daughter, another book that seems like a book that I'd be into. This is a book about a woman whose daughter has to move back in with her, and they have a very complicated relationship. She doesn't understand why her daughter has made decisions that her daughter has made. She doesn't like her daughter's partner, who happens to be a woman. And at the same time, you're also watching this woman, the mother, fight her own battles and try to handle situations that she's really passionate about in a way that she feels like will benefit the people involved. As you're reading the book, you're watching them essentially do the same thing. Like they both have causes that they're passionate about, and they're going head first into trying to make changes to benefit themselves and the people around them and the people that they care about that are affected by these issues. And for some reason, the mother is so like blinded by her daughter's decisions to go against the grain when it comes to gay rights, that she's like, well, I don't get why you're doing this thing, even though her daughter is essentially doing the same exact thing that she's doing, just for a different cause. Incredible. It was a really, really good. Demon Copperhead. I don't feel like I really need to explain anything about this book. What I will say is like, this didn't gag me, I feel like, the way it gagged a lot of other people, and I think it's just more of like the subject matter in it of itself. I feel like like I already have a understanding of how poverty affects people and what that looks like. This might have felt, I don't want to say heavy-handed, that's not really the word, it just there's something about it that just kind of didn't exactly hit the mark. Like the plot itself didn't really hit the mark for me. What did hit the mark though is Demon Copperhead himself. Like the Demon Copperhead as a character, I think is possibly one of the most well-written characters that I've ever read. I think Barbara was just able to really cultivate a strong narrative voice for Demon Copperhead. In Demon Copperhead, Demon is such a strong character that it almost makes it feel like every other character is underacting. Like it feels as if he's like outshining everyone to such a degree that it's truly just Demon's world and everyone else is living in it. And I think that might have been the main like gripe that I have with the book. But outside of that, it's like the Demon as a character is just so good that it makes it hard to really give it any less than 4 stars just based on that. My Heart is a Chainsaw, Stephen Graham Jones strikes again. This is a ode to slasher films, but besides it being that, it's also a story about a young girl and loneliness and dealing with abuse and just wanting to not have to deal with your abuser. And honestly, yeah. And honestly, she just like me for real. Her being so obsessed with slashers as a obvious way of escapism, which I think it toes a line in such a way where you can see that it's escapism, but you could also see that there is actually like genuine love for like horror and slasher films. And I think that's such an interesting like balance to have. The evidence of things not seen. I don't have a lot to say about this book. I think I kind of expected to enjoy this more. I did enjoy what this book has to say about how we as a society treat Black children, and therefore it ends up being like Black people as a whole. I did enjoy like that aspect of it, but unfortunately it's not really something that I feel like sticks like in my brain. It's not something that I'm constantly like going back to, but this is also like the first like James Baldwin book that I've ever read, so I don't really even have like another like reference point to any of his other writing, but I still do very much look forward to reading his other writing because I still feel like this was really good. This just wasn't like the James Baldwin book for me in particular. Next stories for Punjabi Widows. I loved this book when I was reading it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was really sweet. The kind of like found family aspect of it, the self-discovery aspect of it, having a story about this young girl that's like hosting a writing class that doesn't realize what the hell she's walking into is such a like fun concept. And to see like her, like the romance that buds within this story, seeing the relationship that all of these widows have to each other, the relationship that they end up developing with the young woman that is their instructor, all that they do to make sure that they can keep holding their class is so fun. It's so sweet. It made me like tear up at times. I really had a great time. I listened to it on audio, and I think that also like made it real nice because I got to like hear everyone's like accents and stuff, and that was fun. Kai, which I hope I'm pronouncing right. I feel like I haven't heard that title like out loud in a long time. This is, and I feel like I said this either in my review for this book or maybe this was in a wrap up. I really don't remember. I said that this was like the type of mythology that I've been looking for. All of the girly pops love a good Greek mythology. I said, no, Greek mythology is not my tea. Indian mythology is my tea. And here we are. And this book is everything that I feel like people get from like everyone's feelings on Cersei. That's how I feel about this. I think that this was, again, well written, great story. I had a good time. I don't really have like much to say about it in spite of me saying like, oh my god, it was so good. I don't have much to say about it, but I really do enjoy this author's writing, and I'm really looking forward to reading another one of their books next year. Foxglove is the second book in the Belladonna series, which, as you can see, it's not as high up as Wisteria, and that's just because this one wasn't as good. It's not giving like middle book syndrome where it's just bad, but Belladonna's definitely first, Wisteria's after, and then nope, Wisteria's first, Belladonna's after, and then Foxglove is last. It's good. It's just not like, it's just not great. I don't even fully remember it. It could have almost gone into like the next category because I don't even fully remember it, but I enjoyed it well enough. I think I'm pretty sure I gave it like 4 or 5 stars. I'm looking at it now. It was good. I don't remember it. Where I fear we're heading into that territory where I'm gonna have less and less to say because I'm just forgetting. What Feast at Night. What Feast at Night is the second book in, I don't know what this series is called. But the first book is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I don't know what the series is called. I really don't remember. I didn't like this one as much as the first one. The first one I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it even more on reread. But the second one I was like, yeah, I'm just happy to be with this character again. I'm just happy to be in this world and there being gross, creepy gothic stuff happening. But it wasn't anything that I think about really. But I had a fun time reading it. I will possibly read them again, maybe. So Late in the Day. So Late in the Day is both a singular story, but what I'm talking about is the short story collection by Claire Keegan. I enjoyed these short stories. I liked how they intertwined into each other, like how every topic intertwined, and how it's about relationships, it's about men and women and dynamics. These are gonna get like more ridiculous as we go on. Love Claire Keegan's writing, so I'm gonna always be like, yeah, Claire Keegan. But this was like one that it's not really memorable to me. I remember the ending, I remember the beginning, and I remember the end, and then I kind of remember stuff in the middle. Thirsty. Thirsty I actually almost forgot to put on the list altogether. What does that say? I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this author's other book more. We Were Monuments, I think that's what it's called. I enjoyed that one more. This one was really heavy. It almost kind of felt like a fever dream, which I think was purposeful, just based on the fact that it deals with alcoholism, and that's probably why it like the main character is like not doing okay, and then therefore like by proxy we also are not doing okay as we're reading it. It had a really sweet ending. Like it ends in like a hopeful way, as you would hope like a YA would end. It was a good book, just didn't stick out to me. Heaven's Official's Blessing. I love this book. It just doesn't compare to like other things that I've read. It's really just for like shits and giggles. Like I just have a good time. It's just a lot of fun, but it's not something that's like sticking in my brain. It's not like peak writing where I'm like, oh my god, this was so good. Like it's not giving that. It's just like funny and camp. At least like the first like 3 volumes are just kind of like funny and camp. That's it. I don't even really, what was volume 1? I don't even think I read volume 1 this year, and I have volume 1 written down. I'm pretty sure it was volume 2, and I don't remember it. I don't actually freaking remember it. It was like it was the first book that I finished this year, and I don't remember it, which is concerning because I'm going to read the 4th volume before the year ends. So good luck to me, I guess. When the Vibe is Right. When the Vibe is Right should have probably been above Heaven Official's Blessing, but that's besides the point. When the Vibe is Right is about a young girl that lives in Trinidad. Her family is really big into carnival. She ends up like having essentially like a rivalry with another band, and she ends up like falling for this boy that was originally working for the rival band, and that's the story. It was fun. It was cute. It was a book. I didn't know that much. 1 about Trinidad and 2 about Carnival, which I feel like I'm saying wrong, but it's because I'm not confident. It's because I'm not confident. But yeah, I didn't know a lot about like either thing, and I feel like it was nice to kind of get like an insight of what that's like. I also did enjoy that this book doesn't really like hold your hand. Like this is like the world that this character exists in, and they don't try to like overly explain to you what's going on. Like you just gotta catch up, and I really appreciated that, and it allowed me to really like get into the story. And I had a good time when I read it. Just again, it wasn't super like memorable. All the Lovers of the Night. I just don't remember reading this. Oh God. I'm definitely descending into madness now. I don't remember reading this. I remember that it was good. I remember that I pulled out a lot of good quotes from it. I remember saying this was my type of book as I was reading it because I thought the writing was really good. But that's all I have for you. I actually don't remember this happening. Not really. I just remember that this was a book about a woman that was kind of on like a self-discovery journey, ? And then ends up in somewhat of a relationship with some guy. Like, that's all I can really offer you about what this book was about. I would literally have to reread my own review to like really tell you. No Longer Human. I actually remember this book a little bit more, and the main thing that I remember about this book is misogyny. But this book is about a guy that essentially doesn't feel like he understands humans, and he feels like he's separate from humans, and a lot of his actions are questionable. A lot of his decisions are questionable. At one point he goes on a whole tangent about like him hating women essentially, and I was like, okay, I could have did without this misogyny, but go off, king. I like the writing because it's Japanese literature, so I'm going to like the writing. That's just, it kind of seems like it's how that goes. But again, I could have done without the misogyny. I really could have. Okay, I'm actually gonna read my notes for this because there's a lot of words in this title. Wound. We'll try again. Wound from the Mouth of a Wound. This was a poetry collection. Don't read that much poetry. I think this might have been the only poetry collection that I read all year. I used to be really into poetry like years ago. I used to write poetry years ago, and now I kind of just feel indifferent about poetry. And when I was thinking about where to place this book, I couldn't really place it any lower, and that's how it ended up being here, because I feel like it was good. Like, the poetry collection was good. There was a lot of quotes that I underlined. I think the topics within this poetry collection, with relationships, with gender identity, with gender expression, body image, like all of the topics that were mental health, like all of the topics that were discussed in the poetry collection were really good. I think the poems itself were really good, but it made me realize that I feel like I don't understand what poetry is. Like, I don't fully have an understanding of like what poetry is supposed to be, and this just made me a little bit more confused. But I still did really enjoy this collection, in spite of the fact that I don't usually listen. I don't usually read poetry. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is like a 3.5 star book to me. I understand why people love this, but it isn't a book that I particularly love. However, it is a book that I'm willing to continue in the series. Like, I'm going to like read the other two books. I liked it enough, but the thing that I actually liked more than anything is like the romance, which feels crazy. It feels crazy that like earlier in this video I was saying how much I care about like the characters and the plots and all that kind of stuff, but in this regard I think the romance is like what's holding this up. Like, I don't care that Emily is doing what she doing. I don't care. What is she, a woman in STEM, I guess? Like, I don't care. None of it matters to me. But I do really enjoy her relationship with the Fae man. Like, that's that's what I care about. I think that their relationship is really cute. I find him interesting. There's that. I find him really interesting. But her, I'm just like, girl, I don't care. We do not care. The romance and the actual Fae man, that's interesting. And I guess the Fae lore in and of itself is interesting. And I guess that's why she's making an encyclopedia now, isn't it? That's why she's making the encyclopedia. And the last book in this section is The Agronauts. I went back and forth on this one. The Agronauts is a memoir, but it's a memoir that's like written, I was gonna say written in verse. Not really. It's written kind of, I guess, in like short vignettes, not really a full like memoir in the way that you normally would see a memoir. I really enjoyed this. When I first read it, I was like, like, that's kind of how I felt about it. It still just keeps kind of like sticking in my brain. Like, I do actually like revisit this book like at random. Like, sometimes I'll forget like what book it is, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it was that book. So this next section is Oh Wait, I Forgot. Because I did in fact forget a lot of these books. Either I forgot the actual book itself, or I forgot that I read it. This year at least. Like, I remember things about the book, but like, do I remember that it happened this year? No, I don't. So the first book on this list is Wash Day Diaries, and this is a graphic novel about a bunch of girly pops doing wash day. It was cute, it was fun, I love the artwork. I would still like a physical copy of this book because I think it was cute and fun. But I don't remember anything about this really. Like, there wasn't anything to really hold on to. It was also just like, I was gonna say it because it's a graphic novel, but like, that's untrue. There are graphic novels that I remember. This just wasn't really one of them. But it was good enough. Nothing burns as bright as you. This was a YA romance that, if memory serves, which it doesn't, if memory serves, was essentially a poetry collection. Like, it was a bunch of poems about, are like written in verse. Oh God, this is insane. I remember being very sad reading it. Again, it just wasn't really something that stuck with me. Like, it's a thing that I read. 10 Things That Never Happened. One of them feels like me reading this book this year. This is a Alexis Hall book about these two guys that end up in a relationship with each other. It starts because one of them fakes amnesia, and he doesn't even fake amnesia on purpose. He cracks a joke and everyone takes him seriously, and then they end up like falling for each other. But the big boss is like toxic and problematic, and I remember reading it and being like, girl, why do they like each other? Why do they like? I'm like, this man is not okay. This man is not okay. It feels like centuries ago that I read that book, but here we are. A love story for Ricky Wilde. It's about this girl, this woman who is kind of going against the grain in her family because she doesn't want to be a part of their funeral company, I think. And she's like, I want to be a florist. Yeah, because the thing that she wanted to do still ties in to what her like family business is. Like, they're a funeral company and she's a florist, but somehow she going against the grain and they side-eyeing her because she want to go and make flower arrangements. And it's just like, be so for real. Like, y'all could just combine this. Like, she could still be under like the family name, and this could be like a whole just like separate thing that's still intertwined. It's like, oh, we can get you your casket, but we could also get you flowers for the funeral. Like, I don't understand how no one in this book had vision. Anyways, she ends up meeting this guy, and he's like stuck in a time loop. No, he's not. Oh my God. He's like from the past, but he is immortal, and she ends up like falling in love with him. But the thing about him being immortal is it's kind of giving like the invisible life of Addie LaRue, but not really, because it's not like out of sight, out of mind. It's just like after a period of time, out of mind. Someone was eventually going to die. Both of them were eventually going to die. I don't remember. And then like someone sacrifices themselves, for a spoiler, someone sacrifices themselves so they don't die, or one of them doesn't die or something. Oh yeah, he was cursed. That's what it was. Someone put a curse on him and he ended up being immortal. I'm struggling. I'm on like 6 hours of sleep. I'm not doing okay. Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, but it's the graphic novel. I don't remember this. Just straight up. I didn't remember this after I read it. I remember trying to do my wrap up for this and trying to explain what this story was, and I wasn't explaining anything. And I still have nothing to explain to you. I don't even fully understand what any of these fantasy books are. Same thing with like Heaven Official's Blessing. Like, I don't really know what it's about. I just be having a good time. The Metamorphosis. This is back to when I was reading classics back in March. Big bug and man that's so pressed to go to work. Like, there's nothing else I have for this. I'm just like, sir, there ain't no way you want to go to work this damn bad. But that was the society we lived in, I guess. I don't remember what I was supposed to take away from that book. The only thing that was in my mind is I was just like, oh, I would never do this much for a job. I would never be worried about my boss when I turn into a big ass cockroach. Don't piss me off. The Fall of the House of Usher. What Moves the Dead is better. The Fall of the House of Usher is the reference material for What Moves the Dead. And I feel like What Moves the Dead is better. The Fall of the House of Usher is like, yeah, I mean, I see what it's done culturally. I understand what it is as far as gothic horror. I see how gothic horror has pulled from it. And that's the thing that I have to give it credit for. That's what makes it good. Is because you can see how other things have referenced it, right? But apart from that, yeah, no, boring. This Ravenous Fate. This book is about a young woman who is a young woman. Was she that old? Maybe. This young woman that is a part of a family of vampire hunters, and she ends up falling in love with a woman that's a vampire. And obviously that's bad for her brand. It's real bad for her brand to be in love with a vampire. And also this vampire is mad because her family is the reason why she's a vampire. So she's having this shit life and constantly thirsting for blood and looking like and is viewed as like the scum of the earth. And it's all at the hands of this girl that she's in love with family. I really don't want to like drag it too much because it's by a new author, and I didn't hate it, and I still want to like continue. I think it's going to be a duology. I want to read like the next book. I want to see how it ends. I just do think it's a little long. But besides that, it was a perfectly good book. Immortal Longings. I enjoyed this when I read it, but I fear I read this January 1st. So like, friend, I don't remember that this happened. Immortal Longings, all I remember is that it's people that can like leave their bodies and hop into like other people's bodies, and whoever spirit or soul is like strong enough is the one that can survive. So if you hop into someone's body and they have like a weak like spirit and they can't like fight you deciding to like enter into their body, that they can like kick you out of your own body. And either you can hop into another body or like your soul just disappears, I guess. And then the end of the book, there's like a battle where the girly pops be body hopping, and our main character didn't want to do that. She wanted to like win the competition without having to do that, even though she was like a high rank person. I don't know how to explain this because I like I can see it in my mind's eye, but that's not helping you with me explaining this. But either way, I thought it was fine. Looking back on it, I think I gave like 4 stars originally, but I think I was kind of just being generous. I really didn't enjoy it as much as I made it seem like I did, because I really just enjoyed it in theory. It wasn't really something that I was like, ooh, this is such a great book and I'm having such a great time, because like I wasn't. And this also could have been that maybe this wasn't the type of book I should have read on audio. Maybe if I was reading it with my eyeballs, I would have felt differently about it, but I didn't. Gwen and Art are not in love. Oh, brother. This book was long. It was long. It is historical fiction, but like not really. Like it's historical fiction, and the author says that it's like it don't really like take that historical part too seriously, because if they would have whipped out an iPhone, I would have been like, yeah, yeah. What do you mean? Of course. It's about this young girl that I believe is a redhead. That sticks out in my brain for some reason. She is supposed to get married to this boy, but she don't like this boy. And not only does she not like this boy, as in is kind of questionable as if she likes guys or not, at least in the beginning. I think she ends up like coming out as bi at some point, but she not only doesn't like this boy because she thinks he's annoying, but she's also questioning if she likes guys in general. And then this guy also doesn't like her for reasons. I don't remember what their reasons are, but they don't like each other. And they're supposed to be getting married. But what ends up happening is Miss Girl ends up falling for this lady knight that's within her. Yeah, she's like a princess or something. That's important information. She's a princess. Her brother is a prince. They're twins, I think. They're both redheads. Anyways, so the guy that is supposed to marry her ends up falling for her brother, and she ends up falling for her lady night. And then the guy that she's supposed to marry, his best friend, that's also like his right hand man, I guess. I don't know. He also has like his own little straight romance happening. So we have like lesbian, gay, and straight, and I'm like, I respect. That's cute. That's fun. But this book kept going. Like, it just would not end. And we're at like the last, I think that's like 450 pages. I'm at the last 50 pages of this book, and they're at war. Why are they at war in the last 50 pages of the book? Why are people dying in the last 50 pages of the book? But yeah, it was just too long, and because of that, I'm like, I remember stuff, but like do I guess I just told you so much stuff, but like, do I remember the book? I don't know. The Great Gatsby. I wish for a greater Gatsby. I understand why other people love this, but I kind of don't. Like, I'm like born and raised in Long Island, right? Live in Long Island. Have always lived on Long Island. I guess it's on Long Island, huh? Am I in Long Island even? Okay. Have always existed on Long Island. I don't care about rich white people on Long Island. I don't care. This book was never going to be for me purely because of that. I see how you could like the drama. I see how you could like the mess. I see how you could like all of the like party scenes. I see how you can like all of that. I see how you can just not give a shit that it's about like rich white people. But I couldn't separate that. I don't know what I was supposed to gain from this, but also I feel like at the time that I was reading all of these classics, I was getting kind of jaded. Like, as I was reading them, I was like, bro, I'm just kind of over it. I don't want to read them no more. So that might also be that. This is actually a book that I'm willing to like revisit and see like how I feel. Yeah, so I'll probably reread it at some point. And maybe I'll like enjoy it more like on a reread where I'm not just reading a bunch of classics where I'm like, oh my god. But I would hope for a greater Gatsby. This Could Be Us. It's an adult romance. I liked the autism representation. I actually really liked the love interest. I didn't care about much of anything else. There was nothing else about this book that stands out to me. It was a book. I see, again, it's another one of those situations where I'm like, I see why other people would enjoy this, but it's just not something that I'm personally like, oh, this is my type of romance. This was so good. Like, I was invested enough. I thought the like sex scenes were good. I liked the male love interest, like I said. I liked it. Also, I really liked his dynamic with his sons. Yes, he had 2 kids. I liked the dynamic with his sons. I liked the dynamic with his ex-wife. Were they married? I don't remember. I liked their like family dynamic. Honestly, it was just him. Like, he was what was holding the book down. I didn't really care about Miss Girl. I don't remember nothing about Miss Girl. House of Marion. We really getting into territory where I don't remember shit about shit. This book is about a girl that goes to this like magical school, I think. And she finds out that her grandmother like runs the school, and her mother just like up and disappeared. There's nothing else I can tell you about this book. I kind of actually, ironically enough, even though I don't remember anything about it, I do want to like read. I think there's another book either currently out or is going to be out maybe next year within this duology series. I don't know. I do want to like continue this or finish this or whatever. I'll just have to reread that first book. But I think I might have read that book in January, and that's why I like don't really remember like anything about it. Heartstopper Volume 5. It's orange. I don't have anything to say. Actually, we're gonna move right along. Good Girl Complex. Good Girl Complex is about this girl that she's a business owner. Like, she owns like this really like an app. God, I think she owns an app. And so she's like a millionaire off of this app, and her parents are like, but you gotta go to school. So like, she's in school, but like, she doesn't give a shit about being in school. And she's constantly looking for other like business ventures. So she over here like trying to buy a whole ass building, and it's just like, whoa girl, calm down, you're like 21, like relax. So she's trying to buy a whole ass building. She ends up like getting real like locked into this small town that she's in. She ends up crushing on like the bad boy with the tattoos that's poor. That's not funny. That's poor, and doesn't have a good relationship with his mom. So hashtag mommy issues. And he has a twin brother, and his twin brother is annoying. And he's also kind of annoying, and they have a lot of interesting sex. And it's camp, and it's stupid, and it's unserious, and I'm pretty sure I gave it 4 stars. But like, did I read it? Like, it's again another one of these books where it's like, I'm telling you everything about it, but like, did I read it? Did that happen? It felt like a fever dream. I Am a Cat. Okay. This book pissed me clean off. I Am a Cat is a book about a cat. It's a book about a cat, and spoiler alert, at the end the cat dies, and that pissed me off even more. The fact that I went through this whole journey with this motherfucking cat just for this cat to fucking die pissed me clean off. Because what do you mean? This book is so long. It's so long. It's a fucking brick. It's a brick. Like, it's an actual brick. I can hit you over the head with it right now, you die. Like, it's an actual fucking brick, and it just went on, and like, you could tell. The crazy thing is, if you read like, I guess the prologue, it's not really a prologue. You read like the beginning part of the book. I don't know what it's called. Where the man that translates this book, because it's originally was in Japanese, the man that translates this book talks about how the author's friend told him it wasn't good. And that's all I'm gonna leave you with. Graveyard Shift. This is ML Rio's like comeback novella. I feel like I was harder on this than what I needed to be, but also it's like there's nothing memorable that happened in this. It's a whole cast of characters. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them, and they discover a grave, and they're all just like, ooh, spooky ooky. And they decide that they want to figure out what's going on with this grave, and I'm like, ooh, y'all better than me. And all of them are like night shift workers, or like night owls in general. I don't think they're necessarily all night shift workers or graveyard shift workers, but they all are at least like night owls, like used to being up late at night. I just don't really remember like what was their ties to each other, why they felt the need to do this. I did like the fungi aspect, because I always love a good like gothic horror with fungi, but that's about it. I just didn't think that this was maybe it just like wasn't long enough. Like, it didn't feel like it had enough detail or enough like body to it, but it felt like it just like came and went, and I was just like, oh, okay, that's it, I guess. And it didn't really have anything for me to like hold on to, and therefore I feel like I just forgot everything. The Truth According to Ember. Here's why I'm gonna get mad. Here's why I'm gonna get real mad. Okay, I recently read this book. So I read it in November, and this was one of like the indigenous books that I read, and I was like, I feel like I've read too much like heavy indigenous literature, and I was like, I just want to read something like lighthearted and fun. Like, I want to see the girls have fun. And The Truth According to Ember is about this girl that is half white, half native. She is sick and tired of not being able to get a job. She works at a bowling alley, and she down bad, and she broke. Her best friend broke, and they're tired of being broke. So she's like, I'm gonna go and apply for a job, and I'm gonna pretend that I'm white, because it's not technically a lie, because I'm white passing and my daddy white. So I'm gonna go and pretend that I'm white. She ends up getting this job, and she just lied like nobody's business. And the thing that got me about this book it's not one that she lied that she was white, because like, girl, I don't care. It's not that. It's not that she lied on her resume because baby, you and everybody else. It is the fact that she would lie about shit she ain't need to lie about. She was also lying about shit that could easily be fact checked, and I was like, oh, you're bad at this. I'm like, you're bad at this, because it's one thing to be a liar, it's another thing to be a good liar, and she wasn't that. She wasn't that. And that was what was constantly grinding my fucking gears, was the fact that she was such a bad liar. Like, why are you going and lying where you live? You were lying about where you live to a man that's going to have to show up at your house one day. You going and lying about what type of car you drive. Like, you don't eventually have to like walk out to your car and people aren't going to see you. Like, I get how there was things that she thought would make this not be as obvious, but I'm just like, girl, be so for real. And the thing that killed me the most is the love interest is like letting her slide with a lot of these lies, because he like her. And I'm like, okay, you better than me. He likes her, so he let all these lies slide. But the gag is like, he would just randomly get mad at her for lying. And I'm just like, one, why don't you just fucking call her out? And two, why are you just randomly getting tight? Why are you like, you just picked a random moment to get tight? Like, there was no reason, like there's no reason for you to be mad at this in particular, and now you're bad. It's like, okay. And at the very end, there's like no, like, it takes the end of the book for her to really start to see like everything that she's done, for there to actually be some sort of consequence to her actions. It's just like, girl, why did it take all this time for there to be consequence to your actions? And then when she gets fired from the job, spoiler alert, when she gets fired from her job, she goes and has like, they give her enough time to monologue. I'm just like, oh, y'all have to be so for real. You know good and goddamn well that there ain't no way that this room full of white people is letting some native girl go and monologue to one of their boys. There ain't no way. So the book pissed me clean off. However, I do have another one of this author's books on my list to read next year. So we're gonna see how that goes. That's gonna be in a specific video. But yeah, that pissed me clean off. The next book is Ruby Ramos' Recipe for Success. The only thing I remember about this book is this girl had issues with her family because she wanted to be because her family is filled with chefs and she wants to be a chef, and they're like, you gotta go to school. Culinary school? I'm confused. Like, you want her to go to school, let her go to culinary school. I'm confused. They didn't want her to do that. So she's ends up going into some like baking competition. Her family decides to care. I don't really remember. All I remember is that she was obsessed with this little boy. It's a YA romance, by the way. She's obsessed with this like little boy, and he's a ginger, and they just like keep talking about how his hair reminds him of fire. Oh, okay. So that's it for that section. Now we're going to go into like the bottom 10. There was 19 books in that last section. Here's the bottom 10. And what I will say before I get into the bottom 10, I did exclude all of my nonfiction books that I read that weren't memoirs. So there is some books that are missing off of this list. And then there's obviously like me not including every like volume of certain books that I've read, because it is all give or take the same. So this bottom category is called James. What was that? Because I must ask, what were any of these books? Please explain them to me. So the first one on the list is Kiss and Spell. It's an adult romance that is a part of a series. I think the series is called Wishful Thinking, or Witchful Thinking, because like all of the characters are witches. It's about this girly pop that's a witch. She's working as a fortune teller. She don't really give a shit about the job. She ends up meeting this guy that's Fae, because of course he is. He mistakes her for his blind date. She sends him in the right direction. They end up interacting again, and they end up in a relationship. The book is a part of a series, but they don't remind you of anything that happened in the book prior, and I read the last book a year ago, so I'm like, okay, like what am I supposed to take from this? I don't remember. I don't remember anything. But I was just like, I feel like I was just frustrated with the book, and there's a lot of like plot points that are just dropped. It just wasn't that good. It just wasn't that good, and it wasn't that entertaining, and that's it. Even If the Sky is Falling, another adult romance. If I will never read another adult romance for the rest of my life, I think I'd be okay. This is a short story collection of a bunch of romance stories that take place when people think that the world is ending, essentially. And all of them end up getting trapped with these people that they have some sort of like relationship with. And there's only like two stories that are good. And the rest of them aren't good. The rest of them are silly and ridiculous and unserious and not good. And I don't even really remember many of them. Cool, Awkward, Black. This is another short story collection, but this is a young adult romance short story. No, this wasn't even romance. This is just a young adult short story collection. And it's supposed to be about like a bunch of different stories about like the nerdy black kids and just a bunch of stories for them. This is one of the YAs where I'm like, ooh, this is actually for them kids. Like this, like I wasn't vibing with it in the least. There's a few stories that were really, really good. You can go on to my Goodreads and like see exactly which stories in both this one and the last book I mentioned. You can see what actual specific stories that I enjoyed if you were to want to read those specific stories, because I don't think the rest of them are that good. But yeah, this just wasn't anything to write home about. Most of the stories sucked, so there's that. A Little Kissing Between Friends. Another adult romance. Are we surprised? This is a book about a woman that is a stripper. She's also a single mother, and she ends up falling for her friend who's a butch lesbian and also a producer, I think. Their relationship is strange. I loved the concept of this book. Like, I love the fact that it's a book about a stripper. I love that it's representation for single mothers. I love the representation of a butch lesbian. Like, all of that, I was like, yeah, this sounds like fun. This sounds like it would be a good time. It wasn't. It was bad. I didn't understand their dynamic. They seem to have lack communication in spite of them both being queer women. That was weird. There was parts of this that I guess were good. In theory, there was parts of this that were good. Like having the one character that was the lesbian realizing that she was having misogynistic thoughts and ideals, also being like biphobic towards the girly pop that she was in love with. Also, I never understood why this woman that was a stripper, like she got a kid, but it's like for what? Because we never see her spend time with her kid. Her kid always ends up at somebody's house. Either it's the baby daddy or it's a relative or somebody. Like she never was with the kid. So I'm like, what was the point of her being a single mother in this book if she's not raising her kid? So that pissed me off. The Familiar. This is a gothic horror romance about a woman that is Jewish, I think, but is pretending that she isn't. And that's all I really remember about this. I've never like read a gothic horror where I was like, oh no, like this is like actually uninteresting. Like that's the thing that it wasn't even boring in the sense of like, oh, this is boring, but like there's a climax at the end, and that's what makes all of the boring stuff in the beginning work. There's like creepy things happening and it builds up. At the beginning I was like, oh yeah, there's like a creepy thing here or there that I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And it just like never progressed into anything. It just continuously was just boring and uninteresting, and I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the plot. Nothing mattered. Nothing made sense to me. I was just like, I'm over it. I don't care. This sucks. The 7-10 Split, another adult romance. Is all of the last ones adult romance? Oh my god, almost all of them. Okay. The 7-10 Split. It's an adult romance about these two women that used to be best friends. They were in a like bowling club together. and they end up having like a falling out for like stupid little petty bullshit reasons, and then they end up beefing as adults for stupid petty bullshit reasons, and nothing about their relationship or the dynamic makes sense to me. I don't understand why they ended up not getting back into contact with each other, why they end up having the falling out to begin with, why our main character was still holding a grudge against the other girly pop so many years later. Like, it didn't make any sense. It's like, girl, grow up, like, get over it. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why Miss Girl was that down bad about this other woman, where she would just let her treat her like that. Like, that's also diabolical. No characters, none of the side characters that I care about did I find interesting. It was boring. I didn't care. Let's move on. The Fraud. This I actually truly have nothing to say about. I listened to this on audio, and I don't know if I was just like checked out as I was reading this, but I truly don't remember anything about this. So much to the point where I like didn't rate it on Goodreads, because I'm like, I feel like I didn't read that. Like, I almost feel like that didn't happen, because I don't remember anything about it, and I don't care. But it also seems like when I was reading reviews that other people didn't really follow the story either, or care about the story. Like, it has a low Goodreads rating too, so it doesn't really seem like I'm the only one. Like, I was looking to see if there was other people that could help me piece together what the fuck any of this was about, and no one could. So that's that. Die, My Love. Another book that I also can't really tell you what it's about, but that's not because I don't remember. I do remember like reading this book. I remember being confused as I was reading it, and I still to this day do not understand what this book is about. Die, My Love is, I guess, essentially about a woman who's like descending into madness, and we just like don't know what's like real, what's fake, why she's acting the way she is, why she's, I think, was pretending to like be a different person. She was just like, didn't care about her kid, didn't care about her man, didn't care about herself, was just a fucking weirdo. And I was like, what am I supposed to gain from this? The only thing that's like good about this book is the title. That's the only thing. There's nothing else to like hold on to that's like actually good about this book. I can't even really tell you. I guess it's like literary fiction. I'm just like, what was the point of this book? Like, I don't know what the logic is, what it was supposed to represent, what it's supposed to stand for. It just felt like a fever dream, and not like in a good way. In the last book, the very worst thing that I've read this year, again, another adult romance, Single Dad's Club. Single Dad's Club was a Lily Reed's book club pick, and it was so atrocious. It's about this woman who I think works at a coffee shop, and this like single dad enters into the coffee shop, and she decides to like devote her life to helping him acclimate into this like new town. And she's like deciding that she essentially is gonna like watch his kid for him, so he can get some work done. She's like on her hands and knees at one point scrubbing the floors. She's like keeps trying to get him to build community with people within the community, like doing all of this labor. Also, it's called the Single Dads Club, but like none of these men were like really single dads per se. Like, they were still all in community with the mother of their children, so it wasn't even giving like single dad for real. And I don't even think all of them even had like were the main caregivers of any of their children. Also, the book was like, the dialogue was so strange that it felt like it was AI generated, which was disturbing. The cover, stunning, and there's nothing else. Nothing else was good about this book, and that's all I have to say. I don't know how many books that was that I actually ended up having on my list. How many books I actually ended up talking about. I've been filming for like 2 hours. And I am exhausted. Please like and comment. Tell me what you've read this year. Tell me what your favorite books were, what your least favorite books were. Follow me on Goodreads. Follow me on Storygraph if you want to see these things happen in real time. And that's it. That's the end of the video. Okay, stop watching. Bye.